Plan on flying? In order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID. Learn how to get your real ID today at tsa.gov/real ID or visit your local DMV.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Jen and Andrew with the Victoria Real Estate Show. It is May 1st, 2025. Jen, your hair looks great, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Good morning. Your hair looks
morning.
good too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I spent hours on it. Yeah, it's the beard. I get trouble for the beard. Anyway, let's stay on target. So we got once again we're missing Jane, but she's a world traveler, so she will be somewhere. She's out there, but she's had meetings she couldn't avoid as well. So she's actually wherever she is, she tries to make it and join us, but she wasn't able to today. So today we are going to talk about, just really briefly, I guess, the end of month stats. We don't have the full package, so we'll do that next week, where we talk about what happened in the prior month in a deeper way. But we do have the full month stats in general, just for some of the basics. And we also thought we'd talk briefly about, we've just had a federal election. So there's the question of how does this, now that we've had the election, how does this potentially impact housing prices, the housing market? What's that gonna do to us? And right. I must confess that I'm woefully unprepared for this, because we just chose this topic, and I've been super, super busy. So we're going to just talk it out and think about maybe what this could mean for us and what's meant in the past, and go from there. Jen, you had some things to share.
Yeah, did you want to jump right into kind of the election, or do we want to talk about stats first?
Right. Good question. All right. So let's talk a little bit about stats. So let me get to that. And then we'll get into your mortgage update as well, because we always like to do that. So when we do look at what happened in the last week, the market does seem to be picking up still. We had 749 new listings go on last week. And that is up from 670 the week before, which was up significantly from the week before that. Mm-hmm. We had 353 properties go on market. 353 properties went pending. So that's also an increase over the week before, which was 301. So we're seeing an increase in the pendings, possibly because we're seeing an increase in selection. I can tell you, I have been waiting for more selection. Even though the selection is pretty darn good right now, my buyers are still waiting for that right property to come up for them. So with more selection, more chance of that. People are definitely still increasing their prices. 333 price decreases versus 239 the week before. That's so a lot of people sharpening their pencils. Yeah. That's a big amount of price decreases. And then 188 properties were expired. Now, again, these jump in new listings and this jump in expireds, there is a bit of a false thing to note at the beginning of the month, just because a lot of listing contracts tend to run to mid-month or first of the month or end of the month. And so we probably see a number of properties that expired are in that left column of new listings as they relisted, because they don't just expire and go away. People do decide they still want to sell their home. It's just that the contract is expired for that run and it's on a new one. So that's where we're at.
So I'm just going to ask a question. So in looking at these stats right here, because I keep getting the question, I've had it multiple times this last week too.
Yeah.
Is now a good time to buy?
Yes.
Right? Because you got lots of supply.
Yes. the thing that I find is buyers are always waiting to hear that the market is going crazy, and then they feel like they're missing out. And when there's a lot of selection, they're not in a hurry, and they're not feeling motivated, and they're waiting. They're concerned about prices going down, I guess, when there's a pool of options. But the times where I have seen the most interesting homes, the best value for homes and the best chance of negotiating a good price is when there's a lot of selection and there's not a lot of buyer action.
Yeah.
That being said, of the listings that I have on market myself, our team has a number of listings on market. My own listings, we've got all but one are under contract. Two just went unconditional. Third one, conditions are due soon. We've seen some multiple offer situations, or at least and then some close to multiple offer situations. So the market's not cold by any means. So yeah, I think if you're wondering when it's a good time to buy, it's before everybody decides it's a good time to buy.
Yeah, I agree. It's when everyone else is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me actually go back to that and just say, and further to that, there's been the uncertainty due to what's going on with the tariffs down south and our economy, and how is that going to impact Canada. And that's real. There's real concerns there. But that does cause some, puts some water on the fire around buyer sentiment. But that's a good thing for savvy buyers who are gambling that things are going to be, and at the end of the day, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
So we have reached the end of the month of April. We are actually in May 1st. So our stats for the month of April are up to date now. So we can see that for the full month of April, we had 642 net unconditional sales. And compared to last year, that's just a little bit down. We had 679 last year for the month of April. New listings were pretty much on par. 1,629 new listings in the full month of April versus 1,620 last year. The main big difference here that we're seeing is the active listings are up by over 400 versus last year. So we've got 3,425 active listings versus 3,017 last year. Okay. So when we look at our list to sell ratio, it is bolstering a little bit more this month versus last month. So again, that tells us that it's moving more strongly towards balanced sellers market. The higher this list to sell ratio, the higher percentage of those that are listing, the properties coming into the market versus the properties going out of the market. That's getting closer to not parity by any means. We're still at under 50%, but this is a pretty strong list to sell ratio. So before we get into the conversation, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the
mortgage world,
world, and actually anything that might also relate to the federal election, if there's been any impact from the federal election in your world so far?
Sounds good. Well, from the mortgage side, I mean, definitely lots of inquiries with people's mortgages that are coming up for renewal, whether it's, in 2025 or early 2026. The sooner we have an initial conversation and create a game plan, the better. People, finding out what people's plans are with their property, if they're wanting to sell, if they're wanting to do some renovations, all that kind of stuff all comes into play in deciding the right path for their renewal. Existing banks are being very aggressive on retaining their book of business right now, which is good. But it's also important to make sure that you've got the right product. So
Yeah.
just going for a 5-year fixed rate, if you're potentially planning on selling in 2 years, could be a big problem when we look at the fine print and what your potential penalty would be to get out of that mortgage. So
Right.
important to have a good conversation about your mortgage and look at your renewal options with an unbiased mortgage professional.
Yeah, and I give that advice to clients all the time. Talk to the mortgage professional, because the bank will be looking at things through the bank's own lens. They have their own biases, they have their own limitations, and they have only a limited scope of product as well. So when you go to the bank and you ask for what they've got on their shelf, you're picking from a limited number of products, and they're looking at you as well through their lens, and you need to fit into the box that works for them and go through the hoops that work for them. And it's a lot more conservative than a mortgage broker. Now, I want to circle back to something you said, book of business.
Yes.
So what is that? What exactly? So they're wanting to
Retain.
retain
Yeah.
their book of business. Do you want to just explain that a little bit more about what that means?
Basically, their banks have realized, or lenders have realized, that it's much cheaper to keep your existing clients than always go for new ones,
Right.
which is a great concept. So, right?
Sure is.
So,
Well, we realize that too in our own world, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So they seem to have finally come around to that, and which is good. But then it's a constant back and forth, because what I say to people is, okay, well, it's comical. So you get, well, my bank said that whatever you tell me, they'll match.
Yep.
And I say, okay, well, what's their best rate? Let's find out what their best rate is, and then I'll tell you if that's good or not. So it does become a bit of back and forth.
Yeah.
As well. It's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and so they're saying they would rather keep the business. So they're going to give a good deal to those folks coming up for renewal because they want to keep it. It's definitely cheaper for them to keep business, even if it's paying a little less than the cost of going out to find new business. Because every new client, there's a cost to marketing and finding them. But that's a bit. There's still the fact that you're locked in with that bank, and it's not always about best price. I've seen that time and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that the branch representatives, and unfortunately I've been dealing with this a few times this past week, with issues with, payment accounts and things being not set up correctly with their mortgage starting out with a bank. And unfortunately, the branch representatives that you're dealing with, they don't always stay there for very long. And whereas dealing with a mortgage broker or working with me, I'm on it and I'm connecting with the branch manager, and we're getting things sorted out right away.
So you're talking like, let's call you a manager, even though but you're at management level in a sense. You're more of the CEO of your business. And you're dealing with and talking to the management at the bank, as opposed to when you go into the bank and you deal with a representative. I mean, I don't know about you, but everybody's starting to look younger and younger these days behind the counters and whenever I go for any kind of service. So, and really green and not that experienced. And then they've got a question. They have to go to the playbook. They have to look up, this is how I'm supposed to respond to this. And they don't actually have the contextual awareness of having done this for a number of years and knowing that this is who you call and this is how you get around this issue and this is what happens. So this is true of anyone with experience, folks.
I'll share
how it works.
A story too.
Yeah, please.
So these poor clients, they wanted to change their payment from monthly to biweekly, which is great, smart. You want to go with biweekly, you're going to pay your mortgage down quicker. So they went to do that, and the branch representative changed it to biweekly, but didn't tell them that there's an interest adjustment amount, which I explained to them. But unfortunately, the branch representative then changed it to biweekly and took out a full payment as opposed to the interest adjustment amount on the date, and then
Oh no.
out from the wrong account.
Oh no.
So clients didn't even know. A couple months go by, and they get a call from the collections department at the bank, and they're going,
Yeah.
what is going on? I had no idea. Anyways, it was then we were able to sort it out. I was able to talk with the branch manager and got it sorted out. And in essence, it worked out better because then we made sure that the extra payment was applied as a lump sum payment. But again, that wasn't explained to the clients. It was just like, oh, sorry, this account's now overdrawn. You owe another $500. And
Oh wow.
it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And frustrating, but it was just inexperience. And yeah, so
that's what you chalk it up to, is the inexperience of, again, there's a representative who's been parachuted into they're in that position, they've been given that role, but they're not necessarily been doing it for a long time and really know their stuff.
That's right. It's important. You have to have a payment account correct for mortgage and that.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We know that. But I have to admit, I was 19 once working at a bank, and I had no idea what I was doing. So
you know what? And we all make mistakes as well. I mean, that's not to say that we don't make mistakes. I wouldn't want to make that. I wouldn't want to make that claim. I think that when we do make mistakes, we are really good and quick at fixing them, and we make sure that they do get fixed.
yes.
And at the same time, it happens a lot less often than maybe somebody who's new. And some of those mistakes, especially on the new folks, can be really costly. Like if that hadn't been caught, or if you hadn't been able to intervene, I mean, sometimes the banks, even though it's their fault, they may not take responsibility for it.
Yeah. Who pays the extra interest? Who's paying, what about the NSF fees, or, all those things that I jumped on and got it all straightened out. But
good for you.
Anyways,
good for you.
There's
okay.
The week. So do you want to talk about the
no, I don't want to talk politics.
So, well, a couple of things. So with the Liberal government, they've got a minority. The key federal housing initiatives that are going to potentially impact BC that the Liberals have put forward. One is a GST exemption for first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
Which, I'm reading off of my notes here. This move aims to reduce the financial burden on new buyers to the housing market, which could increase the demand in urban areas like Vancouver and Victoria.
Yeah, but this is not in place yet, or is this?
No, it still has to get voted on.
Yeah.
The second one, and this one I find interesting, is an investment in prefabricated and modular housing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is to address the housing supply shortage. So they want to invest in prefabricated and modular homes. Right now, banks and lenders do not like prefabricated and modular homes.
No. Yeah. That being yeah, I mean, I was at one point very interested in alternate construction methods. We on some of the islands, we have some cob built homes or rammed earth built homes, different types of homes that, the lenders definitely don't like.
Mm-hmm.
They're not built to, like, there's no way to I don't think there's a way to align modern code with some of these building methods. And of course, the lenders will be feeling like this is something that is not going to have the same value. And so protection of investment, if they're lending a bunch of money when there's something that's, quote, prefab. But on the other hand, like, we're seeing really interesting building methods coming out, like 3D printing. And a lot of the prefab I'm seeing coming out now is actually really smart. So I think some of this might be mindset, and we have to kind of get over it. And we have to get alignment with the banks on some of this.
Yep.
There's definitely a lot of room for poor quality with prefab, I'm sure, and a lot of levels of quality, but you can get that same with housing. I guess the question becomes, can we get modern building code to come into alignment with it?
That and like the modular housing piece, like is this something where the government is going to own the land and they're going to, you know, build houses on it, but you only own the
So a
home?
leasehold.
Elite,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And again, that that is not something that's there's not a lot of lending opportunities around that.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, folks, if you're listening and you want to make any comments on any of this, please feel free to chime in. So yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So we've got a liberal government. They've been talking about, they definitely want to get more housing. Liberal minority government, they want to get more housing in. What's the actual reality going to be? We don't really know. If we
Well,
had had a conservative government, we would have seen a lot of, reduction of red tape and opening up of the floodgates in that way. Whereas I think with the liberal government, it's going to be more about spending our way to more housing.
well, in the third initiative is that they're planning on expanding trades education, which is huge and needed because we have such a shortage on housing, but we need the people that are educated,
willing to pick up a hammer and actually know how to use it.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they recognize that that's really important, but I don't know how this will all play out.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, if with more, we definitely are behind. I've seen a number of talks and stats on the fact that we're very, very behind on our housing compared to the number of people that are coming into the country, our immigration, our population growth. The charts do not match, and we are way, way behind on housing. That being said, there's different ideas, I guess, around housing, and we see a lot of homes. I'm working with some folks right now. It's a couple, dual income, no kids, and they're looking for a single family home, 3,000, 3,500 square feet. It's like, is that absolutely necessary? It's what they want, and they can afford it, and that is fine. But at the same time, there's other, if you want to get housing, I remember being younger and having friends that were renting almost a mansion, but each person was renting a room in that mansion. So let's say 7 rooms, not exactly a mansion, but a very nice large house over in the Mount Tomey area. And I remember there was like 7 or 8 rooms in there, and each person was renting a different room, but somebody had rented the whole house. I myself did that when I was younger, where I was the one on a lease, and we had a 5-bedroom home, and it gave me a bit of a discount on my own room rental, but we were 5 roommates and their partners, all living in this house. And it was some of us had partners, some of us did not. I had temporary partners at the time. I think I was single, and every once in a while had a girlfriend that would come over. We had some I don't know what to call it.
That's good.
I was single and looking for love.
Jane is shaking her head right now. She's watching.
She's like, what are we going down this road? Okay, no, but the point, okay, back on track. The point is that we do have enough housing for people if we choose to share our housing, or if people choose to, like, you can buy co-housing. There are people who can get together, and this is for you to maybe talk about briefly. And we've gone off track from the federal election here, but people do buy together through a corporation, and then co-own a home.
That's a possibility. Or under, some people will buy under a holding company as well. So there's definitely options around there. Or as a large family, you get large families, potentially 2 families purchasing a property. Where the limitations are is the amount of people that are going to be going on the mortgage. So ideally, we don't want more than 4 people on a mortgage. It gets a little.
I see. So you have to have some. There needs to be that. Yeah. I guess the point is that even you think about back in the day, there was a single room schoolhouse full of all the students, and there would be a log cabin with a family of, with 2 bedrooms and a family of 5. And we've come to today to, want and expect that we can all have our own little spaces. But if we do have a housing crunch, there's ways to make room for it. The federal government is trying to step in to, provide more housing. And you had some more points there that you want to bring up? Because I think we've
Those are the
exhausted that.
the 3 main initiatives. The implications, I mean, with going back to the GST exemption, that could be interesting because that could stimulate increased buyer activity for brand new homes.
Yeah.
Because that's the only time that GST is charged.
It's only going to apply on brand new homes or a home that was used for commercial purchases, which is generally not going to be something a new first-time buyer is going to be stepping into, like a farm or something that had been an Airbnb. Yeah.
Actually, that could be interesting. I wonder if it would be exempt in those circumstances.
Well, we don't know. We haven't seen the legislation yet, but that would be one of those areas where that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Would be allowing for a better price on some of those past Airbnb units. But we also are kind of working through those as Airbnb is no longer allowed. And I think people have been eating that GST themselves.
Right.
So those are interesting points. So the main one that's really interesting one here is there's a lot of, I think the province too was talking about this, but cooperating with First Nations around building on First Nations land and building the leasehold properties and selling those leasehold properties. There'd probably be a 99-year lease.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, opening up, if the federal government is opening up more prefab homes and so forth, again, if those are going on government land, then there's less of a concern, as you said, for the lenders and everything like that. But that being said, lenders do not, let's put it this way, if the government is providing housing, that's one thing. If that housing will be part of the housing market for sale, leasehold is always a difficult sale.
Mm-hmm.
So that also remains to be seen. And it may not be the boon that people are thinking it will be, because you need a much higher down payment for a leasehold. If you're going to buy it, the banks won't want to lend as much. So you need to save up more money.
Yeah, it could appear to be more affordable, but at the end of the day, is it? Right?
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, you've got something that, like, let's say you buy there. I was just talking to some folks at an open house. They came through and said, we've been living in our home here for 47 years. That's amazing. But, there are some leases, some leases now that are under like 25-year lease remaining on some of the leaseholds. And what happens once that lease is up is a big question, but generally the the land takes the house back, right? You're paying for the land there. Sorry, you're paying for the unit on the land, but you don't own the land. And so it's kind of like being a tenant.
You're renting
for a long period of time. And once the tenancy is up, you have to move out. You have to move out with that building on the land.
And where are you going to put it?
Where are you going to put it? Yeah. So these lease agreements only have a certain length of time. And unless there's a renewal baked into that lease agreement, and this is where you want to have lawyers and so forth. Anyway, getting down the road on that, these are, as you said, these are not necessarily as good a deal as they look. And this is why lenders won't want to go into them. Mm-hmm. And why it's so important to, like, those ones have so much fine print, those leaseholds. And some of them are less. Anyway, some of them are under 25 years. Some of them are definitely under 40, and they're usually a 99-year lease. So if you're thinking about buying something for future generations, that's not a great option. Okay, so I think that's it for us. I mean, we've had no comments to get into with people wanting to say yes, no, maybe so on what they thought of the federal election. Usually people are pretty opinionated, but we haven't heard anything. So we'll let that go. And we'll have next week, we'll be talking about the actual stats from the prior month, where we have full-on graphs and can show you how it relates over time and so forth. Today, we just had the end of month general stats. So it's 10 o'clock. We both, I think, got busy days ahead of us. So we're going to run on. And thank you, everyone, for being here, for watching, for listening, for tuning in every time. Please remember to like and subscribe to our show if you can. We really appreciate it. We will see you guys again here next week. We're here Thursdays at 9:30. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm Andrew Plank. I'm with the Vibe Collective at Royal LePage. And I'm at 250-360-6106. Email is info@andrewplank.com. And website there, andrewplank.com or realvibe.ca.
Here I am. I'm at 250-217-4925, and email is jen@jenlow.ca. My website is jenlow.ca, and I did recently do a blog post on the federal election.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so go to Jen Low's website, jenlow.ca, and we've got some stuff about the federal election there and some of the impact. Can you tell us a little more about that?
We just went through most of it.
There you go. Okay, check it out.
How it's going to impact the housing market potentially.
Okay, great. So Jane Johnston is not with us today, but she's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group. She is licensed with RE/MAX Camosun, and she's reachable at 250-744-0775. And she's Jane at briarhillgroup.com, and you can check out her website, briarhillgroup.com, as well. We have episodes of this show posted both on my website, her website, YouTube, you name it. There you go. All right, guys, we will see you next Thursday at 9:30. Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
You too.